Hello everyone, in this video we are going to learn about the box model in CSS. The CSS box model is a box that wraps around every HTML element. It consists of some margins, borders, padding and the actual content. In web development, the CSS box element refers to how HTML elements are modeled in browser engines and how the dimensions of those HTML elements are derived from the CSS properties. Okay, it is a fundamental concept for the composition of HTML web pages. Let me proceed further into the topic. In CSS, the term box model is used when talking about the design and the layout of a particular element. That refers to when laying out a particular document, the browser's rendering engine represents each element as a rectangular box according to the standard CSS basic box model. What the CSS does means CSS determines the size, position and properties like color, background color, border size, all the properties of these boxes. Okay. The thing here is when laying out a particular document, the browser's rendering engine represents each element as a rectangular box according to the CSS standard box element, and CSS determines the size, properties and position of these boxes. Let me consider a box model for the particular element in our CSS file. I am taking the content here. Okay, this is the general content of a particular element. Okay, this is the content of the particular element. If you consider some element, the element content will be I am presenting here. If you talk about this content, it is the area where the content appears. That means where the text, images or every video players will be appears within this content area. That means the content area bounded by this content edge. Okay, this entire edge is known as content edge. For example, if you consider this thing, this is the content width. Okay, this is the content width. Okay, for this particular content, this entire thing is the content width. Okay, if you consider this thing is represented as the content height. Okay, and this entire thing is referred as content edge. Okay, for a particular element in a CSS, if we consider a box model, then we have one content for that box model. Okay, for that content we have content width and the content height, and the content area bounded by the content edge contains the real content of the element. The area which is bounded by this content edge will contain the real content of the particular element, such as text, image or any video player, and its dimensions are the content width and the content height. It is often as a background color or background image also. And with some extent, if you consider an padding border, okay, if you consider one padding border here like this, some space around the content within an element, if you consider one padding edge, okay, this is the padding edge, and the space around the content within a particular element is nothing but an padding. Okay, this space is nothing but a padding. It is a transparent area. This entire padding area is nothing but a transparent area. Okay, that means the padding area bounded by the padding edge extends the content area. Okay, extends the content area to include the elements padding. Okay, in practical we will make use of all these elements to give a better sizes for a particular element, better spacing for the particular element. Okay, here the point that you need to keep in mind is the padding area bounded within the padding edge. Okay, the padding area bounded within the padding edge extends the content area. Okay, it will extend the content area with some extent, right? With some extent, the padding area extends the content area with some padding dimensions. Like here the padding dimension is padding width, this is the padding height. Okay, these are the some of the other terms that you need to keep in mind. Hence we can conclude that padding is nothing but the space around the content. Okay, this is the content, the some space around the content which extends this content area is nothing but an padding area. Okay, it's nothing but the padding. And if you consider one border edge, okay, I am considering one border edge. Okay, this is the border edge. A border edge is nothing but a border that goes around the content and the padding. Okay, this border goes around the content and the padding. The space over the padding with some extents, which includes for both the padding and the content, is nothing but the border. Okay, it is also represented within a single element. Okay, it is also represented within a element. But here the point need to understand is the border area bounded by the border edge extends the padding area to include the border elements. Okay, to include the border elements, and it will be represented as it goes around the padding and the content. Okay, this is the general border of a particular element. Okay, this is the entire border of a particular element. Within the border we have padding and the content. Okay, we have content dimensions as content width and the content height. Okay, if we extend this content with some extent, and that extent is nothing but the padding. This padding is the space around the content within an element. Okay, if you extend this padding with some extent, that is nothing but border. Okay, that is nothing but border. If we talk about the margin, okay, I am considering one margin hedge here. The space around the border, that means outside the element. Okay, the space outside the element with some extent is considered as the border. Is considered as the margin. Okay, the margin area, this is the margin area. The margin area bounded by the margin edge extends the border area, padding area and content area. That means the space around the border area represents the margin area, and we can simplify that as the margin area bounded by this margin edge extends the border area to include an empty area. Okay, to include an empty area which is used to separate the element from its neighbor elements. Okay, this margin space is used to separate the particular element from the another neighbor elements. Okay, I think you will get a big picture about all this concept when we apply those into a practical way. Okay, for now you have to understand the theoretical concepts of those CSS box models. Okay, I think you have a good picture now, and if you have a look over it, it clears an area outside the border. Okay, that means outside the border, if you consider some area, that is nothing but an margin, and it is used to separate the element from its neighbors. If you apply some margin space to your particular element, and the space between the element to the element will be increased. Okay, the space between the element to the element will be increased by using this margin border, by using this margin element. Okay, the general thing is here, this if you consider this border, this is a particular element. Okay, within a particular element we have content. Okay, if we extend this content with some extent, that is nothing but padding. Okay, this entire thing is nothing but padding, and if you further extend this padding with some extent, that is nothing but the border. Okay, this entire thing is the border of a particular element. Within the particular element we have border, padding and the content, and if you see outside the border, that means if you consider outside the element, that area represents the margin element. Okay, that area represents the margin element which separates our particular element from the other neighbor elements. Okay, this is the general thing of the CSS box model. I think you might be clear of how the CSS box model will represented for our elements, and we will catch up in the next video. Thank you.